First presentation this evening is regarding operational changes for parks and municipal services. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may, I'd like to ask Morris Heidi, the Acting Director of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, to come up to the podium and kick this off with a presentation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Morris Heidi, Acting Director, Independence Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. This evening, we'd like to share with you some information about these operational changes for both the Parks Department and Municipal Services. So over the last year, we've had some ongoing discussions about how several different city services that both of these departments provide, how we could hopefully streamline some services. These included mowing, landscaping and tree maintenance at city-owned sites, and asphalt and concrete repairs. So of those three areas, we really wanted to focus on reviewing current practices. So how could we be more efficient? How could we be more effective in our operation? Could we centralize some services? And potentially, because we were aware that some of our city services were duplicated. So could we be more efficient? Could we centralize those services? And hopefully by consolidating some of those practices that we do, that would be an improvement for city services. As we approach these discussions, we are mindful of the Independence for All Strategic Plan 2017-2021. As you know, there are several goals, several objectives, and several values in the strategic plan. We really focused on a couple of these goals. Financially sustainable, we wanted to look at that aspect, and also quality. And as far as objectives, we wanted to see if we could optimize our resources, if we could improve visual appearance, also improve public infrastructure and facilities. But really the heart of it for me was that value statement, looking for solutions and finding solutions through collaboration. In other words, we can get more done when we work across department lines. As you're probably aware, in the past there have been, at times there have been better interdepartmental workings and other times there have not. And so we wanted to try to improve maybe where some walls had been built up in the past, kind of break those down and see if we could work collaboratively in a better manner. So again, looking at mowing, landscaping, and asphalt and concrete work were the three areas we were discussing. So I might share a little history about these three items. The majority of mowing used to be performed by the Parks Department, and then it was around 2003 or 2004, we believe. I started with the city in 2008, so it predated my time here at the city. But around that time period, right-of-way mowing was shifted from the Public Works Department, which is now Municipal Services, from Parks Department to Public Services. Landscaping and tree maintenance, historically that's been performed by both departments, so again, duplication in services there. And concrete work was performed by both departments. As far as asphalt work, typically parks would employ contractors to do that kind of work. And street maintenance, of course, had their own in-house asphalt crews, so they did city street maintenance and that type of work. So since some of these tasks were performed by both departments, could we centralize services and be more efficient? That was really the question we were trying to explore. So following these discussions and reviewing both departments' operations, we decided on this plan. So this is kind of our implementation that we're moving forward on. So parks will take over mowing, landscaping, and tree work at city facilities previously done by municipal services. With that change, 3 full-time equivalent positions, which have typically performed right-of-way mowing, will be shifted over to the Parks Department for that right-of-way mowing operation. However, they will be available for snow removal operations during the winter season. And along with that transfer, mowing equipment was also transferred. So equipment, some mowers that had historically been purchased by the general fund. Conversely, municipal services, they agreed to take over hardscape maintenance. So any concrete, asphalt areas that we typically have maintained in parks. So the deal was they would provide the labor and equipment and we would just pay for materials for those repairs and those projects. So I wanted to give you a couple examples of efficiency we have already realized, and I think these are some great ones. Bass Pro Drive, this is an area of the city that for quite a few years now, Parks Department has been going out every week or so. We mow one side of the street, and then could even be the same day or another day in the week. Municipal services crews would go out and they would mow the other side of the street. So literally you have two different departments mowing, one side, and one department is mowing the other side. So with Parks Department now taking over that mowing responsibility, we only have one mobilization, one crew is going out there, we're mowing that whole area. I mean, it's just kind of basic common sense, really. Another good example is the trail from Rotary Park to Country Club Park. Our parks crews would mow along the trail. They would get to these wide open areas where there's some city-owned lots. We would again just mow right along the trail, and these open areas would be mowed by municipal services crews. So again, taking that over, our crews are already there, we're already mowing it. It's just kind of expanding the work that we were doing when we were on site. And lastly, a good example, so City Hall here at this facility, police building, we were already across the street at Hiram Young Park. We were already there mowing. It just made perfect sense, to drive across the street basically and mow these facilities as well. So really the key with mowing is we're saving on our mobilization or our travel time costs. The time to mow is still the same. It's really just that, duplicate travel time that the crews are having to go out to those sites. So when we talk about landscaping and trees, a couple items that kind of swung those tasks in our area towards parks. Parks currently has a horticulturalist on staff. Many of you know Charlotte Oleko. She has a master's degree in ornamental horticulture. She not only serves as a resource for our department, but other city departments. She's also a great resource for the citizens. I know a couple of weeks ago, she has been talking to some residents about their ash trees and the emerald ash borer problem, advising them on what they can do, preventative measures or that type thing. She also applies for our Tree City USA certification and also manages the Vail Arboretum. So we already had that resource in our department. Another item, Parks already has equipment for tree maintenance. So we have bucket truck, we have stump grinders, we have that equipment. We're doing that already in the city parks and the areas we maintain. So it's just a little bit of an expansion of the area, but the tasks are already part of what we do on a normal day. And lastly, we kind of view landscaping trees, anything of that nature, a little different perspective. We're trying to salvage trees rather than remove them. One example is we've actually treated 43 ash trees due to the emerald ash borer. We've been able to save 43 trees here at City Hall, our historic sites, and at parks. So really trying to save a tree if it is worth saving it. Obviously, if it's damaged by lightning or wind or beyond repair, then we would remove that tree. I want to be clear, we're not taking over all tree maintenance. This would just be tree maintenance at city-owned facilities. So street maintenance, which is part of municipal services, they will continue to respond if there's a windstorm and trees are down in the street, blocking traffic, or there's side obstructions. They would still, kind of those hazardous trees, they're going to do that aspect. We're more pruning and maintaining trees and that type thing. Lastly, another example, so talking about asphalt and concrete, so hardscape areas. Several years ago, I think it was 2018, we had a quote to do some repair work at the National Frontier Trails Museum. This was to tear out a large area of concrete. The price then was about $40,000. And again, with this new model of we're just paying for materials, municipal services is providing the equipment and the manpower. And this isn't really apples and apples. It's a little different area. It's maybe about 2/3 of the same area, but our cost is going to be about $4,500. So $4,000 versus $4,500. So we're really excited about maximizing our dollars to use for repairs and maintenance. Also with asphalt parking lot maintenance, some of you may have driven by and noticed this at the National Frontier Trails Museum. Street maintenance is already paving that lot. Coordinated with Lisa and their crews, and we're really excited. They're actually milling that lot. They're going to pave that before we open the museum on August 7th for our first bicentennial activity. So again, a much cheaper rate than we would have received from a private contractor since we're just paying for the materials. And then trail maintenance, this is more of a future aspect as time allots for municipal services. Again, we would pay for material costs and they would be maintaining are overlaying an asphalt trail or concrete trail, doing maintenance on those areas. So again, kind of centralizing those hardscape repairs, maintenance, those tasks. They have the equipment, they have the materials, they have trained their employees in those skill sets to do that type of work. And they focus on that while we focus on other areas. So kind of wrapping it up, this is kind of what we came up with as a catch-all phrase, and this is a little tongue-in-cheek, if you will, but basically, if it's parks, if it's green, it's parks, so that's kind of a overarching theme, if you will. If it's municipal services, if it's dead, it's municipal services. However, we still retain the cemeteries. Just want to throw that out there, so that's not the case. They did not take the cemetery, but we tried, but that still remains for parks. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any comments or questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Councilman Huff.
Yes, I had a few things. Kind of involved in quite a few of these parks, and I realize we're under a lot of budget restraints and personnel. The ones that come to mind right off the get-go is Sycamore Hills and Glendale. Get a lot of calls on them about the quality of the mowing and the blowing off of the equipment and the sidewalks, more of a quality issue. And looking around at the weeds and stuff like that, I know that you're just getting started on this, but some of the things I see is the weed eating, the trimming of the trees, you've got that. Another one that I get a lot on is Bass Pro. The restrooms down there get pretty rough on the weekends. I realize we have some homeless issues here, and so that's another one. And the only other one I have that's big, and I know that City Manager Adam, Councilman Steinmeier's been out on this, and this is this Mill Creek Park erosion. And I'm not so sure it's actually in the park, but it's gotten pretty far out of the banks there. I know we have a few places in the city, and they're probably going to DNR or some, I don't know that it's a city issue, but I've got a couple people, they've lost their sheds and their garages and everything else in the creeks as they, when I was a kid, you could jump across them. Now they're 40 foot across. But.
Expanding, yeah. If I could just address those comments. So Mill Creek Trail, that's actually a trail that the city has an easement. We maintain just kind of a narrow path from Mill Creek south. Part of the stream bank there has eroded that area, and we've been working with Lisa Phelps and Municipal Services to try to remedy that situation. So that's kind of in progress as we speak. We don't actually own the underlying property. We just have an easement through there. For Sycamore Hills, part of the struggle there is there's a stream bank buffer zone, and so some of that area has to be left, can't be mowed down like you would normally mow 3 inches in a park per se. So we have to be very mindful of that because that's going to create additional erosion, as we take away that vegetation. And then Bass Pro, as far as the restrooms, we have been struggling with some homeless elements and other things. It's just an ongoing struggle. We try to keep those restrooms clean and maintained, but at any given time, we do have issues at those locations. So
I appreciate you addressed these already, it sounds like, but yes, I do get a lot of calls on the restroom, not so much during the week, but man, I guess the weekends is overpowering down there.
yeah, well, heavily used on the weekend. Sure, yeah, exactly. So
Thank you, that's all I have.
Any other comments or questions from the
Madam
council?
Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Steinmeier.
Just on the trail we're talking about from Mill Creek, from Jones Road over.
Yes.
to- Is that what we're talking about?
yeah, south to I forget the name of the street, but kind of headed
Yeah.
towards the Truman Library,
Right.
headed south. Yes.
And
yes.
and I noticed last time we were down there, that the erosion is actually taking out, it's underneath. I mean, it's eroding underneath the path, and the path is starting to collapse. Worry about folks at night, when it gets darker, when the days start to shorten up, that is there any way we could put a rail or something, just some kind of safety measure where people aren't?
We could certainly look, we may actually approach a time where we may have to close it if I had not realized it had gotten to that degree, but if
It'd
it
be
is
good.
undermined like that, for safety reasons, we may
Yeah,
have to look into that.
The day we were out there, Adam, it was clearly underneath, right? Okay, so I just want to make sure I was right on that.
Yeah.
And
We'll
then,
take a look at that.
yeah, I'd appreciate that. And then, Mill Creek, the tennis court parking lot, I about lost my front end on a 1-ton truck as
Oh.
I pulled in there.
Well-
That parking lot is really bad.
Yep. And if you go back to my presentation, we're gonna try to get municipal services to help us with
Lisa.
that, so. And
I'm
then
a
all,
huge pickleball player, so, you know, that means a lot to me.
There-
I'm kidding, of course, but when I do go there, it's a pretty rough,
yeah.
parking lot.
And we fully acknowledge that. That has been one of our struggles, is trying to come up with a solution for our parking lots and some of our paved areas. So we really feel like this is a win-win for us. So it's gonna take a little bit of time to get there, but.
Right. Well, you did patch it, so I appreciate that, but the whole parking lot is.
So, like that particular parking lot, some others, they are just basically gone. They're
Yeah.
almost to gravel, and
Right.
so even though we can patch a few areas, you know, the long-term solution is to repave
And the
those areas.
bathroom at that site too is, it's almost like that one real well too.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
found all kinds of fun stuff there. So if we can concentrate on some of those, that'd be great.
We sure will.
All
Yep.
right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I just had one, Mr. City Manager. If I heard Mr. Heidi correctly, we're going to move 3 full-time positions from municipal services to parks. So do we need to make a budget adjustment for that?
Yeah, Morris, why don't you go ahead and explain how
Sure.
we're going to do that? That's a very good question, Mayor, yes.
Yeah, we're still working out the details, Mayor, but I believe that will come forward. Finance will put that on their next quarterly supplemental budget ordinance to clean all that up. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Madam
I'm
City
sorry.
Mayor.
I forgot you were here. Yes,
I
go
know,
ahead.
I understand, and it's no big deal. I just wanted to thank Mr. Heidi and obviously Ms. Phelps for putting this together and finding a way to make services more efficient. That really helps our budget and will provide better services long-term. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to our policy and process review discussion items. Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. So attached to your packets, you received 3 memos from me. I will save everyone from reading all of them to you. We'll kind of go over the highlights of them. Like I said in my memos, as well as an email that I sent to the council, this is really just to open up the discussions on how we change some of these processes, make them a little bit clearer and more consistent. So the first is regarding boards and commissions appointment process, and that's how it pertains to the council interview committee. The 2 recommendations that I've provided to the council, the first is disbanding the council interview committee and essentially making the majority of those boards individual council appointments. There are a few boards that wouldn't be eligible for individual council appointments, so those would be appointments made by those specific boards and commissions. And the second recommendation regarding the council interview committee is continuing with the council interview committee, but making it a little bit more clear. Currently, the resolution that's on file, we're not following it. We're not following all of the processes that have been laid out in that resolution. So we either need to start following that resolution to the T for every council interview committee rotation, or we need to kind of clean that up so it's a little bit more with the times of how we're currently processing. Some of the recommendations made are making all committee votes unanimous, and if for some reason the committees can't come to a unanimous decision, then after 2 rotations, the applications that were reviewed will be sent to the board to make the recommendation. Next is the council interview committee then would be required to do interviews for every eligible applicant. Currently, we're not doing interviews every single time for every single board. I think this would be a consistent part of the process to do it every single time. Then finally, some of the language in resolution number 6256 includes appointing a chair to the rotating committees. That seems like that would be a difficult thing to do for every single rotating committee, so I would suggest removing that from the resolution if you guys do choose to move forward with the council interview committee. And then finally, there is, let's see here. No, that's the final recommendation on that one. So I will leave you guys to discuss it.
Okay, so just so everybody is clear about there's 2 recommendations for the council to consider to move forward to a future agenda to be adopted. The first one, the following boards would become individual mayor council appointments. As we do with many of our committees now, our streets, parks, tourism, streets, parks, public safety, stormwater are all council individual appointments, if that's correct. So we would use that same process for Board of Adjustments, Planning Commission, PUAB, and TIF Commission. And then those would all be 7-member boards. The charter does not allow for Personnel Board, Heritage Commission, or Human Relations Commission, or Board of Ethics to be 7 members, is that correct, Becky?
Just going back a little bit.
Yeah.
So the charter doesn't allow for personnel board. It's set at 5 by the charter.
Okay.
And the Board of Ethics is also set at 5 by the charter. The other boards, the Heritage Commission, the Human Relations Commission, and the Independence Economic Development and Incentive Commission, those just make more sense to send those to the board to make the recommendations versus individual council appointments.
Okay, so the current board, if there's a vacancy, would make recommendations to the council for new members to be appointed. Okay. And then the second recommendation that we're going to have to make a choice between these is, or we can put them both forward and vote on them both, is to retain the council interview committee, but change some of the processes and procedures within that committee to make it consistent. And if no consensus is reached after 2 rounds, then the appointment would go back to the committee, the board or commission for which we're interviewing, and they would make a recommendation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So is discussion on those 2 recommendations?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
The way it's set up right now, it's our fault we're not following the rules. So I suggest we start following the rules. And the way it's set up, if the interview committee does not reach a unanimous consensus, then there's no committee recommendation. But individual council members can always make a recommendation. And I think we should continue with that. The last PUAB debacle, I personally did not realize that the committee had to make a unanimous recommendation. And it was discussed that, well, if this committee can't do it, we'll pass it to the second committee. And I simply didn't want these same 6 people to interview 2 and 3 times. Why should we put the citizens out because we can't do our job, is how I looked at it. And so I suggest we follow the rules to the T, and then if it doesn't work, change it. But I can't remember why we did what we did in 2017, but we probably had a reason, and I suggest we follow it and see what happens. That's all.
Just to refresh memory of those who are here and who are on the council in 2017, it used to be that the council interview committee was appointed by the council and it served for a period of time. It did not rotate. And then there was a desire from some council members that everybody should have the opportunity to interview the candidates, which everybody does, though, I mean, in a sense. I mean, you can contact the candidates and speak with them. So then it was changed so that that committee would rotate and it wouldn't be the same 3 council members serving for, a year or 2 year or whatever the term of the committee assignment was. So that's why it was changed in 2017.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Hobart.
Hi there, from the cheap seats. I like the idea of disbanding the council interview committee and going to individual appointments. Um, that ensures that everybody on the council has a voice and is invested in the committees. It's a lot more equal than the way we're doing things now. The last two council interview committees did not reach a consensus, and that just leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth. It also would be far more efficient to do it this way. That way, when somebody has an appointment come up, they can take the time and talk to all the people they need to and look at the applicants, and they can invest, each council member can invest the time they want to in it. As it stands now, the council interview committee can be a fairly significant investment of time. And again, like our last two committees, unable to reach a consensus. So I don't think that I think this is a square peg in a round hole, and going to individual appointments is most efficient and most fair for everybody. So that's my take. Thank you.
Any other comments on the council interview committee and appointments?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Steinmeier.
Part of our job in our world is in representing our constituents is that we are to come together as a council, whether we're interviewing or whatever, and find that common ground. And it's worked up to this point, up until the last couple times, and I would like to think that within the varied personalities, I mean, we have to get to a place where we should be able to agree. And if we can't agree, we should be asking the question why, and work to the center. We've got to find that common ground. It's worked up to this point. I just hate to be the council that says, well, we just can't do it. We're all driven by
You
whatever.
know, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you. Finish.
That's okay. Go ahead.
In my view, it has not worked because there is not a consistent process. Some rotations choose to interview everybody. Some rotations select people to be interviewed. Some people don't interview anybody. So there are several things that if we were to retain the council interview committee do need to be addressed so that it is consistent and our citizens who are stepping forward to help us and volunteer are clear about what the process is. I feel the same as Councilman Hobart. I think individual appointments is much more clear. It allows the council members to select people from the community, and they can conduct interviews if they choose. I mean, that occurs now, the way that we do individual appointments. And it's rather haphazard. What's a individual appointment, what gets interviewed for, what the committee or the board or commission brings forward to the council. So I think what the state clerk has proposed is, to me, very clear that individual appointments are made on these boards and commissions because these all sort of fall into a similar category. Unless, the number is prohibited by the charter or the statute. So that seems clear to me, but the process has not worked because it's always been, it's up to the three people who are serving to decide if they want to interview people, if they don't want to interview people. And it still leaves open-ended Councilmember DeLucia is right. A council member can put anything on the agenda that they choose, and there's nothing, I will never, take away that right of a council member to put something on the agenda should they choose to do so. But it really doesn't now define if consensus isn't reached, then what? Does it just go on forever and ever and ever? Does it, if we can't reach a consensus, does it go back to the board or commission to make a recommendation? So if we were to continue with the council interview committee, I think that those are things that would need to be addressed. But personally, I'm inclined more towards individual appointments. Yes.
This was way before my time. So what didn't work before that they brought this on? I mean, there had to be a reason they just didn't come up we're going one way when there was something that brought it about. Do you know? It was way before me. I was just questioning why it was ever brought. Almost all the committees now are appointed, except for a couple of them. So
It was decided that, and forgive me, I'm just going
Sure.
on my own recollection, and others may have different recollections, that all of the boards or commissions that were mandated by charter or statute would be interviewed. And Councilmember Perkins, that probably dates back to the first time that you were on the council, that was a pretty standard approach. Then the council wanted more involvement. They didn't want to just leave this to 3 people to conduct all the interviews for a period of a year. I mean, we know how many appointments we might make in a year. Some years we have a lot, some years we don't have any. So the council wanted more involvement with that process, and so that's when it went to a rotating committee. I don't remember if it was always, you must reach consensus. That was put into the 2017 or resolution, but I don't remember prior to that if that was always the case or not. But the recommendation of the committee was supported by the people who were on the committee when it came to the council. That was standard.
So 96, when I was first elected back then, so this problem is not new by any stretch. We've crossed a century and going into another newer decade here. This isn't a new situation. Every council has a different version of what they would like to see transpire with some of these appointments and stuff like that. Sometimes we would have those interview committees, and sometimes we would not, depending on the pool of applicants and what was taking place with, say, the Planning Commission and the large amount of pool of applicants. And a lot of those pools of applicants were really good, so we just had to sit down and do that. Some of those boards that I sat on, they were called by Mayor Stewart, who wants to sit on this 3-person board, and we would pick it right here at the dais. This is very fluid. Back when I was on the council the first time, then we put some more solid measures into place to kind of streamline that and have more of a deciding factor of how we were going to move forward with these committees. But this is not new by any stretch. I would lean into the favor of individual appointments, with the caveat that the district council people are not just limited to the district person. I mean, that would be probably the first preference, but given the nature of technicalities on the technical needs for some of these appointments, going citywide to find those experts to be placed onto these committees would be important. So I would lean towards individual appointments with the caveat of council districts can appoint citywide individuals as opposed to just district individuals.
Any further discussion? So Madam City Clerk, what do you recommend? Do we put both of these recommendations onto an agenda and and vote on each of them, and whichever gets majority of the votes would be the adopted policy of the council, or would you like direction on bringing one or the other forward?
I mean, ideally one or the other, but if you guys would prefer to have both on the next agenda, I'm happy to put both on the next agenda as well.
So what is the desire of the council?
I think we need to put both.
Put both?
Yes, that's my opinion.
I agree.
Okay. Is there anyone opposed to putting both forward?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'm not opposed to putting both. I had a question though. What would happen if we have a council interview committee? We follow all the rules exactly as written, which, we would agree to do. And then what happens if we don't agree? There's more interviews and more committees, or it just what we did last time where somebody just puts a resolution on? What would that look like?
So, Becky, do you want to, Madam City Clerk, excuse me, you want to answer that on your recommendation?
Yeah, so Councilmember Hobart, as the resolution currently stands, there's no recourse. If you guys don't come up with a decision, the only other option, which is an option at any time for the council, is for an individual council member to put on a resolution on an agenda. My recommendation is that you go 2 rotations, and if you can't come up with a consensus among the committee, then it goes to the board or commission, and that board or commission will make the recommendation to the council to vote on.
What's the board? You mean the people that are already on?
Mm-hmm. So for example, if you guys have an issue with PUAB and you can't have a unanimous consent on the council interview committee, the PUAB will make the recommendation on who's appointed to their board.
And then and then the council would vote on that.
Correct.
So.
And then if the council doesn't agree, then we're going to end up in the same place we're in, which is people can still just put whoever they want on a resolution.
You guys can do that at any time.
Right.
That is not changing. The council has, and there's a specific way to do that that's outlined in the council rules of procedure, which we're going to get to some of those things a little later on in the meeting. But certainly the council has, is entitled to put things on the agenda if they choose to.
Right. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I suggest we have 3 items, one being you don't change a thing.
Okay. So these 2 will come forward as recommendations from the council or from the city or from the clerk? I mean, how will they appear on the agenda is my question.
Because there's so much
Just
friction
staff?
between the items, I would just put them on as non-ordinance action items.
Okay, very
So
good.
they would all 3 go on there.
Okay. The Councilman Perkins touched on this already, but I think that this is something that also should be discussed, as the city clerk has put in her memo, is right now there's several boards and commissions that are individual appointments, and the question is, and this again is not anything new, it comes up periodically, is should you be, if you're a district council person, be limited to appointing somebody from your district or have the ability to appoint somebody from anywhere in the city? So Councilman Perkins, we've heard your thought on that sometimes the level of expertise might make it difficult to find somebody qualified and willing within your own district.
Yes, so my thought was trying to not hamstrung any district person for that. I mean, the preference for me would always be within the district, particularly like a planning commission. First thing that comes to my mind is the ones that we're moving forward to look at and consider individual appointments that are new now, that we just don't be, the district representatives don't be hamstrung to the district, but I would personally give them a personal preference within the district, but not limited to. If
Okay.
that's clear.
Are there any other thoughts
Well,
on that?
Madam Mayor, I mean, if we're just putting, it's quite easy to have a commission or, commission that is heavy in one district and not in another, or not even have a district represented. That's not what we're about. We represent a district. we should put our district representatives in there so that our district has a voice. You have two at large and a mayor. They can put in whoever they want. They represent an entire city, but I think the district needs to be loyal to those who they serve.
And what if that is not able to be fulfilled? As, you know, we're depending upon volunteers, and if, suppose, you know, I'm going to use Councilman Perkins, this is my example. If Councilman Perkins has an appointment to make and he's not able to find a volunteer in his district who is able to fulfill that role, then what would happen? I think it, you know, we're talking about a requirement, or certainly the council person has their discretion to
Sure.
limit to within their district, but are we going to make that a requirement?
I would find it hard to believe that a council person living in their district couldn't find somebody or talk with somebody or bring someone forward. I think that I just think that it should be, the district should be fairly represented in these committees and not have a majority of one district over another, or not even have someone representing a district. I just think that that's not a healthy policy for us. We need to have our districts represented.
So,
And I think that as elected officials, we know people in our districts. We can approach people. I know I would like to see that happen. I know Councilmember Perkins knows a lot of people in the 1st District. It's well represented. The 3rd District's well represented. The 4th District's well represented, and District 2 as well. So I think our districts should be represented on these, especially committees that are charter committees, like rates. Everyone should have a good representation.
okay, let me ask another question. We're in really good shape right now. We have relatively very few vacancies on our board and commissions. That certainly is not always the case. We've worked really hard, this council and councils over the last 8 or 10 years to fill these vacancies. That's been a big priority for our city clerk and her predecessor as well, is to get these filled. So keep in mind that that's not always the case. Sometimes there's a lot of vacancies to fill. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other question I would ask is, if this were to be a requirement, do they need to reside in that district, own property in that district? If they're a business owner in that district, I think most of our boards and commission requirements, some of them, and there's been exceptions made to this as well. Are you a resident, a taxpayer, a ratepayer, you know, whatever that category is? I know there's people who live in one district and own a business in a different district. So how would we handle that?
Those questions are on the application, aren't they?
But I'm saying if you were to have a vacancy to fill, and maybe, you know, Councilman Perkins has somebody who owns a business on the square but lives in the 4th District, are they considered first? I mean, there's people, is it where they live or where they own property? And if they own property in multiple districts, do they have to declare one, or how would that be handled?
If I might,
Do you
Madam
think?
Mayor, I suggest we don't restrict the charter language. The charter just talks about being a resident of Independence. And I don't think we should restrict the charter. And I would hope that whoever, if we do this individual appointments, I would hope the individual council member would select the most qualified person for a citywide board. Thank you.
If that was the case, then why is that out there? There must be something in there.
Hang on one second.
Okay.
The charter also says, the charter identifies the mayor and the council. It doesn't say anything about districts. So, you know, that's the way our council is set up. That's the way people in this city vote, is by district. But the charter does not talk about districts. It says the mayor and the council. And the council is a body. It isn't segregated by district.
For example, what I meant, Madam Mayor, Planning Commission, you have to be a resident for a year before you can serve. That's what I meant. I'm sorry I wasn't clear.
Right. I'm sorry, Councilman Huff, I didn't understand your question.
Well, I was just wondering, it says additional discussion points. So if it's not somewhere, why are we even discussing it?
Because we're trying to clarify, this is something that comes up periodically, that we do have current, even if we changed nothing, we have certain boards and commissions that are individual council member appointments, and the city clerk is looking for clarity on if the council desires to make that a requirement that you appoint somebody from your district, or if you can appoint somebody from anywhere in the city.
Okay, because I never thought it was, of course, I'm
You're at
large.
large.
Yes, I don't have to worry about them details.
Right, exactly.
But I
So,
just, when I see it, it's like, well, what
It was just,
brings that up? You know what I'm saying? If
it's a
never-
question that gets asked,
Okay,
so
okay.
we're,
It's
the
fine.
city
Just want
clerk
some
is
clarification, that's fine.
seeking some clarity.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Sorry for muddying the water a little more, so I apologize for that. That was not my intention. There's plenty of qualified individuals in the first district. I believe we're heavily representative on the planning commission, and as we're moving forward with this discussion, since we're moving forward with the discussion, there is a PUAB opening. I don't believe that the first district is represented on that now, since Mr. McDonald is not on there. So if the council desires, I'll be more than happy to make that recommendation.
Well, Councilman Perkins, first you muddied the waters, and then you muddied the waters again, didn't you?
So, Madam City Clerk, do you, since we cannot take action on this tonight, would you just prefer for the council members to contact you individually with their desire, or do you want to put this on the agenda?
I mean, I think we can kind of put a pin in it for now. What my office can do is we can take a look at the makeup of our boards and commissions to look by what districts are represented, and maybe that provides a little bit more clarity to the council on how the makeup is. I mean, this isn't something that has to be handled this evening. It is just something that we might want to talk about in the future then.
Okay,
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If I may. I'm more than happy to retract my statements, and I'm more than happy to stay with council appointments. I was just bringing that forward for discussion points.
okay. So I'm sorry to be, I still think that we need to clarify, does that mean that they have to live in the district?
Sure.
Or they own property in the district? If they're a business owner in the district, are they eligible for appointment by that district council person? Those are.
You know, Madam Mayor, not to stretch this out longer, but it might make sense to decide, have the resolutions put on as they are by the clerk's office, keep it the same, change how the interview committee works, or do individual appointments, and then we could always address the requirements for boards and commissions as a separate issue at a different time, to not add issues right now. I mean, we're having a hard enough time getting together on how people want to do things, so I'm not saying we shouldn't decide on that, but maybe it makes more sense to, let's just take one step at a time.
And if we put 3 different options before the council as non-ordinance action items, hypothetically, and not one of the three gets majority support, then what?
Then Becky has to, Ms. Behrens has to just put out a memo and go over with the next council interview committee exactly what the rules are and exactly how we have to do things. Because if we can't agree on a change, then we do exactly what Councilmember DeLucci said earlier, which is do what's on the books, but we just have to start following the rules.
So if we fail to pass a non-ordinance action item that says keep it the same,
Right.
what happens? Madam City Clerk.
I really don't know. I mean, honestly, though, I guess I'm a bit confused on the third item. I would think that if the first two recommendations from the memo both failed, you would just default to the original.
That's what I think
But
too. I don't think we
Yeah.
have to vote on it.
I don't know if the three items are necessary.
I'd say that's right. Yeah, just do the first two, because if neither passes, then
everything.
that is a vote for the status quo. Yep,
Right,
Correct.
yep,
Fine.
that's right.
okay,
Yeah, Madam Mayor,
thank you. Yes, Councilman Steinmeier?
I think we're having such a hard time doing this. We can't agree on one person. We can't agree on rule changes. I think we just do what Abe Lincoln said. We endeavor to persevere. Let's figure this out. Let's do slow and
That's
easy.
why we're here
Let's start-
tonight, to figure it out.
Well, it doesn't sound like we're getting much progress here. I mean, I would like to see us just continue and try to work through these, rather than reinvent a whole new system, but that's just me. I still think we should endeavor to persevere, keep moving forward with this, the way it is.
Well, you'll have that option. Is there anything else on this item or this portion of the agenda? Okay, Madam City Clerk, next.
All right, so you guys received a second memo. So some of the dialogue that's been going back and forth amongst the council is how you send things to boards and commissions, whether it's you're seeking recommendation from the board, and if you do that with a motion at a council meeting, if you do that through a resolution. In my memo, I've given you the two best practices and common practices to refer to a board. My recommendation would be to continue pretty much the existing practice, which is also supported by Robert's Rules of Order, which is making a motion to refer. You could do this at regular meetings, special called meetings. One of my recommendations is amending the council rules of procedure to include it as an option at a study session to be able to make that motion. And then I've also included some specifics on what you would do within that motion to make it as clear as possible, which includes the subject matter that you're referring to the board or commission, how you're wanting that recommendation to be presented to council, and when you're expecting that recommendation to come forward to council.
Is there any discussion on this? Is that clear, how to refer something to a board or commission? Okay, then we will bring that forward as a amendment to our council rules of procedure.
And I'd just like to clarify, at the next meeting, it will just be an information-only item, just to be in compliance with the council rules of procedure for the proper notice.
Okay, thank you. Next is council rules of procedure process.
Yes, so I've received some questions from various council members and the mayor on some of the processes that we currently follow. Again, we're just looking for consistency across our processes. So part of my last memo is split into the various meeting types, starting with study sessions. Moving forward, some better practices that we might consider exploring is doing roll call votes at the beginning of the study session meetings. Making sure that there's a quorum present before we do any official business. Otherwise, it would just be for presentations and discussions. Any boards and commissions recommendations should be done by a roll call vote and making the motion to send them on to a regular council agenda. And then again, adding that motion to refer to be added to actions that can be taken during a study session.
Are there questions or comments on this section?
I guess, Madam Mayor, I'm just confused because I I didn't think we could take any formal action, so why do we need to have a roll call?
That's in the council rules of procedure. Those are our rules. That's not required any place. It's our rules. So this would, again, be an amendment to our rules of procedure that we would be able to take votes on certain things, such as referring something, placing something on the upcoming agenda, or giving direction to the city manager.
So would that mean that the study sessions become mandatory sessions in excess of what the charter requires?
No, but if there is not a quorum, then you can't take any votes.
So would that mean we cancel our study session?
No, we can still have presentations. We just
Okay.
can't take any formal action.
Okay, so what formal action would we have to take at a study session?
If the city clerk has a board or commission report and she's asking for something to be placed on an upcoming agenda, that would be a roll call vote. What we currently do, and we ran into a little bit of a issue on this just recently, is normally, as we all know, I say, is there an objection to moving this forward? Instead of doing that, we would call the roll to move that forward to an upcoming agenda, or if there was be a motion to refer something to a committee. If, for instance, this evening, we wanted to refer Mr. Heidi's presentation to the Parks Board, that would be a motion to refer, that would require a vote, or if there was any direction given to the city manager, which we do sometimes do in study sessions, is direct the city manager to, I mean, I don't want to say like answer a question or conduct research, but take a particular action.
Like, for example, when Mr. Stewart when he objected to a suggestion, and he went ahead and he added it to the next regular meeting, I thought that was very appropriate. I was not ready to discuss in substance what his objection was or was not.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't want to forestall him from doing that, so I don't want to change a thing. I think it works fine. Am I missing something?
Any other thoughts on this? Then I would say this, we will, again, this is amendment to the council rules of procedure. Madam City Clerk, I presume that this will also go on as a non-ordinance action item for the council to vote on?
Correct, but it'll be an information-only item at the next agenda.
So how do we determine if we're going to adopt it or not?
Then at the following meeting on the 16th, it'll be a non-ordinance action item, and you guys can vote on it
Okay,
that way.
very good.
Actually, my apologies, it'll be a resolution.
Okay,
So,
very good. Okay, executive session.
all
So
right.
so what
Oh,
you're saying here, just like this, what you just did, so we'd have to vote on, that's what you're telling me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
It's pretty simple stuff. It's just to move, but if there were not a quorum, which we don't call the roll at the study session currently, it's not a mandatory meeting. If there's not a quorum, we wouldn't be able to take that kind of an action. And we could still hear the presentations, we could still hear the reports, we just wouldn't be able to take action to refer something to a future agenda, direct the city manager, or refer something to a committee. Executive session.
Okay. So again, just best practices and then some additional training that I've been through. These are some suggestions for how we move forward in executive sessions. The first is more of a requirement than a recommendation, and that's how we'll be moving forward with those executive sessions. Any type of direction given to the city manager in an executive session, it will need to be confirmed with a roll call vote. So that is in compliance with the Missouri Sunshine Law, and that's how we'll need to move forward with those executive sessions.
Madam City Clerk, can I ask a question about that?
Of course.
Roll call votes taken in executive session are obviously, are just, are under the Sunshine Law, and somebody can request to know what those votes are. So what does the Sunshine Law say about how long that needs to happen. So if we are, negotiating a contract, purchasing or selling real estate, things that, there's a reason why we're in executive session discussing those things, because it needs a level of confidentiality. So explain that part.
Right, so time isn't necessarily a factor. It's some of the actions that are taken in the executive session. So if you want to take a closer look, it's under 610.021, and each of those sections sets out what essentially allows the information in that executive session for that closed portion to be open. So for example, if you look at legal action or litigation, solving the settlement or doing something like that, that would allow for those votes to be open. So it's not like you close a meeting, you vote, and then once the meeting's over, those votes are open to the public. There's certain things that have to happen for those votes to be open per the specific sections in 610.021.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, excuse me, I
Yes.
thought all votes taken in executive session must be reported in 72 hours if requested,
That's not true.
okay?
Okay, moving, is there any other question on that? As the city clerk said, this isn't a option, this is a requirement under the Sunshine Law, so this is how it will be conducted moving forward. Okay, Madam City Clerk.
Some additional best practices, and this is best practices for municipalities around us and statewide. Something that we've kind of gone back and forth on is cell phone usage within closed sessions. It's strongly discouraged in most municipalities, mainly because the closed sessions, it's exactly what they are. They're closed. So in the spirit of the Sunshine Law, phones really shouldn't be used because you don't really know if someone's recording, and that is a violation of the Sunshine Law. If you're recording those meetings and no one knows that you're recording them, you're not allowed to do that. Not saying that anyone is doing that, but it's just a courtesy to not be using your cell phones during closed sessions.
I have a question.
Okay?
What is the definition of usage? Does that mean you can't bring your phone into the room? Does it mean your phone has to be visible so that everybody can see that it's there, that it has to be turned off? I mean, people aren't on their phone, talking on the phone, but does that mean you can have your phone present, but you need to demonstrate that it is off?
I really think that would be up to interpretation of the council. I mean, it really just
Okay.
depends on how you guys want to enforce that, or if you want to enforce any type of cell phone usage policy within executive sessions.
Okay. I'm comfortable with how it's worded, that it's strongly discouraged. Is there any further discussion on that item? Okay.
Okay. Next are notes. So typically it's discouraged that anyone takes any notes during an executive session. Moving forward, the recommendation is going to be if any notes are taken outside of the notes that are being taken for the official minutes for the meeting, that the city clerk will have to have a copy of those for the file.
I don't have a problem with giving the clerk a copy of my notes, but nobody's taken my notes away from me. That's how I feel.
I think that this, I don't think that this, if I interpret it correctly, Madam City Clerk, is that notes aren't, you can keep them, you just need to provide a copy to the clerk, so in case they're requested, she has them.
Correct.
The clerk has them. Any questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Does that apply to the city when they hand us information and then want it back?
That, I'm gonna, either I was the clerk or the city manager, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling around here. What is the policy there, Mr. City Manager?
Usually is our policy to pick up anything that we have handed out at the meetings in executive session.
But they're available if requested under the Sunshine Law. Is that correct?
Well, I guess it depends what it is.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, I'll defer to you, but
I would say that they're available under the Sunshine Law once the closures have expired.
What's that time
What
frame?
does that mean?
Again, there's no time frame. It depends on,
Well,
it
then
depends on,
then can I ask the city manager for it as soon as we walk out?
no, it depends on the closure, the reason why you're closing. Each closure under 610.021 is specific to when you can release the, like, documents and votes. Like, it's very specific for each little section. Something that is allowed to be opened in section 1 might not be allowed to be opened in the closure for section 3 at the same time.
So why don't we just have it as a two-way street?
I don't understand the question.
Well, if the city doesn't have to give me anything for 40 days, then I shouldn't have to give my notes to the city for 40 days. I mean, isn't that what I just heard?
Right.
That's right.
Well, it's information that we've provided for you, so it was already coming from the staff, so, I'm sorry, wait a minute, I have, my colleague may have
So
a
you
point
need
here.
to retain your notes for 40 days. Is that correct? If you take notes in the meetings, you need to retain them for 40 days in case they're requested.
40 days is an arbitrary number, but yes.
Yeah, okay, I mean, 40 days is an arbitrary number. You have to retain your notes, so if they are requested, you can make them available.
Yes.
When those records are opened.
Yes.
Okay,
Adam just wanted to make you aware that every time the staff does provide a handout at an executive session, we do provide a copy for the clerk. So, but then we try to collect those ones so that they don't get out. Right, I'm sorry. Right.
does that clarify? Okay.
All right, and the last thing for executive session, is just another reminder, just a refresher, that any discussions that occur during like executive sessions, they should be confined to the meeting, and generally not discussed outside of the meeting.
Okay, I think we're well aware of that. Any comments or questions on executive session recommendations and requirements? Okay. Regular city council meetings.
All right, regular city council meetings, 2.6 of the council rules of procedure, just, again, this is a refresher. It goes over getting recognition from the chairman, or in this case, the presiding officer, to be able to speak on something. Again, it's just a refresher if you want to address the city manager or address the council as a whole. The proper process is to get recognition from the mayor. The mayor will give you the thumbs up that it's good to go, and then you can address your questions. But again, any questions that are directed for staff need to also go through the city manager. It's just a full circuit there.
So noted. I am the worst offender up here, and I know it, and I do apologize.
It is tough sitting up here to see everybody, so it's very helpful if you want to be recognized to speak, please just verbally ask to be recognized to speak. It is also proper to, if you want to address the city manager, to ask to be recognized to speak by the chair, which is typically the mayor. If it's not the mayor, it's the mayor pro tem. If neither the mayor or the mayor pro tem are here to conduct the meeting, the council elects a chair. And it just makes things run much more smoothly. So we'll try to tighten that up and be, make that a little bit more consistent. And the harder part of that is if you wish to ask something from the city manager, be recognized by the chair, and the chair will address that to the city manager. Okay, next.
On to the backside. It's strongly encouraged that cell phones, again, this is a common practice, that cell phones aren't used during the meetings. In general, this is just a good practice just to ensure that we are in compliance with the Sunshine Law. In most situations, I mean, if you're texting in a public meeting or you're emailing in a public meeting, there's definitely case law out there that sometimes those can be sunshined because people can see that like you're texting up here. So it can become a public record. I just want you guys to be mindful of that. So general practice, just don't do it, and then you're saving yourselves a little bit of heartache there.
Questions? Okay,
All right.
motions.
any motion made during a public meeting, it should be concise. So if you have a motion that you're wanting to make, the words that you say should be your motion. So once you've said it, that's your motion. If you need time to be able to kind of come up with what the motion's going to be, then you could call for a recess. But moving forward, motions really should be in the words of the person making the motion.
Questions or comments on making a motion from the floor? I would add, if you intend to make a motion, you know that you're going to be making a motion. Most of the time, we don't. Motions are usually amendments to ordinances. That's typically what we do. But if something comes up between Friday and Monday and you want to make a motion on it, it is helpful if you would prepare that in writing in advance and provide it to the city clerk for it to be reviewed for form. That's not to change what you want to say or get permission. It's just so that the clerk can review it so it's in proper form and we can make the meeting go smoothly. That doesn't happen too often, but it happens from time to time. Okay.
Let's see here. So citizens' request to speak. Moving forward, I'll come up with a little bit of verbiage. At the beginning of each regular meeting, we're going to kind of reinforce what the citizen request to speak expectations are at the beginning of the meeting prior to the citizens' request portion, just to make sure that people are following those rules.
Okay. Additional items.
All right. Just a friendly reminder, emails sent to the full council, and since this is a public meeting, that's even if the public sends an email, staff sends an email, the council sends an email. If you're emailing the full council, best practice is to BCC the council on it. And if the council is emailed on a chain and you're all on that email, best practice, don't reply all, just reply to the person who sent you the email if you have questions on that.
So, Madam City Clerk, will you please, because I really was not very knowledgeable about the BCC. So the blind copy.
So the BCC, essentially what happens, and you guys have been experiencing this with emails from myself, emails from Zach, emails from the assistant city managers. Essentially what happens is when you're BCC'd on that email, you can't see who the email went to. And so whenever you hit reply all or you hit reply, the only person you can reply to is the person who sent you that email, unless you manually go in and add all of the other emails. And again, this is just another fail-safe to protect you guys from unintentionally violating the Sunshine Law.
So moving forward, I know if I am going to be out of town and assigning the mayor pro tem to serve in my absence, I send an email to the entire council. When I post the executives, when I call an executive session is called, I typically don't include the entire council on that, but moving forward, I will send those to either the city clerk or the city manager, and then he or she can forward that to the council to avoid this Sunshine Law violation, which prohibits the council from having a discussion electronically, so we can avoid those situations. We don't expect citizens to do this. I just want to make that clear. If a citizen wants to send an email to the entire council, they're absolutely entitled to do that, but the council should not reply to all of the other council members if they wish to reply to the citizen via email. Is that stated correctly, Madam City Clerk?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. Next, just another refresher. The Missouri Sunshine Law, it doesn't only apply to the city council, it also applies to all of our boards and commissions. Again, that was just a refresher.
Okay. To be clear on this, I know a quorum of the council is 4 people. If there is a special committee, such as this council interview committee, since we've been talking about that, there's 3 council members. A quorum is 2 council members. That means while you're serving on that committee, or now we have this special committee on healthcare operations, a quorum of that committee is 2 council members, and discussion of that topic outside of the open meeting is a sunshine violation. Correct?
That is correct.
And that also applies to our boards and commissions, so planning commission, I mean, all of them need to be mindful that outside of an open meeting, a quorum of that committee is not permitted to discuss topics related to that committee, or the work that they are conducting, or the documents that they are reviewing.
I have a question.
Yes.
If there are 5 committee members, 2 of whom are council, 3 of whom are not, are you saying that a quorum is the 2 council members?
Wait, give me an example.
We have a health committee. It's 3 people from the health department and 2 people from the council.
Oh, good point.
I think it's 3 members of the committee is a
Correct.
quorum. It's
Yes.
not the 2 council members.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
I just wanted to be
Yeah,
clear. Thank you.
That's correct. Yep.
All right. Next, again, just a general refresher. Just being civil, respectful, and courteous during executive sessions as well as open meetings, just keeping in mind that these are professional meetings and we should be conducting them as such.
Questions? Comments? Okay.
Okay. And finally, the council rules of procedure. Talking a little bit about preserving order. Obviously, that is the presiding officer's responsibility to preserve the order during the meeting. And this includes, but it's not limited to, remarks from the public, staff, and council, which are directed toward individual council members. Again, that's just a reminder.
Okay, so I could use some assistance on this particular item, as the individual who chairs the meeting most of the time, but also for the mayor pro tem. And then in the event that neither the mayor or the mayor pro tem is here, one of you may someday be conducting the meeting. The preservation of order says, as the clerk has included in her memo, it applies to the members. That means the council members. That, as we know, and that we don't permit speakers to come forward and address council members individually. They're here to address the council as a whole. They are not permitted to refer to a council member directly in a way that is, it could be seen as signaling them out, or, I mean, we use the word attack, which might be a little bit strong, but it does not address staff, nor does it address the council's comments about, directed at a particular individual. So I would like some clarity of how the council desires the chair of the meeting to maintain order. If a speaker is directing a comment towards a staff, is the desire for the chair to stop that? And that, I mean, it's a big judgment call to say, is that a attack? I mean, that's the word we use, or a criticism? Do we want to stop people from complimenting our staff when they come to speak to the council? So it's very much a gray area, and it also does not apply to how, if a council, as we're, debating who to put on boards and commissions, for example, addressing citizens by name. So I would like some clarity of how the council views the maintaining of order. Is it just for the protection of the council, or is it the protection of the council, the citizens, and the staff?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
this more directed towards city clerk. In the rules, does it state that we are, as a council, we're not to address each other, but to talk to and through the chair? Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's in
Yeah.
two.
So, I mean, that's getting deep into the rules, weeds a little bit. It says we're not to address council members, we're to address the chair, talk to and through the chair. Are we going to that length? I mean, we're pretty relaxed. We like to talk to each other up here. Is that something we want to do as well? Or are we just going to leave it be?
I certainly don't want to do anything to limit discussion. Recognizing to be, asking to be recognized, I think is appropriate, but I don't think that we should say that we're not allowed to have discussion and debate among the council. What I need clarity on is let me say one thing. If at any time any council member or the city manager wants to stop the meeting, all they need to do is ask. They just ask to be recognized and say, we'll take a recess, or ask the chair to stop the debate, stop the commentary. Everybody is empowered to do that. But absent that, if a member of the staff is being identified personally by a speaker, do we allow that? If a citizen is being identified by name, either by a council member or a speaker, do we allow that? Or is that something that we should, that I should gavel and to maintain order? That's what I'm asking.
Well, clearly, it's your meeting to run, and you're in charge. So,
Well, it's the council's meeting, and I am the chair.
yes.
I
and-
am, but this particular part of the chairman duties is unclear to me. So I would like some input on how the council would like this to be handled. Yes.
Yes, I don't have a problem with complimenting staff. I think that they get beat up every day.
Right.
On the phones and in person, and I do believe that we should compliment our staff. I don't think we should criticize them. I do believe that we should be able to ask questions, though, and of course through the city manager, so.
Well, I'm
As far
referring
as-
more to the speakers, if a
Yeah,
speaker
and we got
comes
into that the
forward.
other day when someone read an article out of the newspaper, and I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. It was really gray to me,
Yeah, it's
so
a
I'm sure that's
gray
part of
area.
this, so. I don't know how I feel about that. I know that they shouldn't be able to address us. As far as us addressing each other across here, I think sometimes it gets a little out of hand, including myself, so I can deal with that. But we also have to have some dialogue up here, otherwise we're not robots. We're humans, and we have emotions, and we like to express ourselves, so I don't know about them.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
when
go
those
ahead.
meeting, that's when the rules to speak to and through the speaker are to the speaker, so that there isn't heated moments, that if we're feeling one council member is maybe speaking, because you're not even supposed to be personal, you're supposed to be objective, you're supposed to speak objectively through and to you. And so that helps. That's the reason when emotions do get involved, and then not calling council members out by name, but addressing you, Madam Mayor.
And in regards to citizens, this says members. If I am going to presume, Mr. City Manager, if the city manager feels that a staff member is being unfairly treated by a speaker, I would expect for the city manager to interrupt and ask me to stop that commentary.
I think that
Or
would be a good
redirect it.
that would be a good expectation. And we would always ask that speakers direct all their comments to the chair and not to staff members directly. And then, as has been pointed out, the mayor, as chairman of this meeting, can then tell that speaker that that comment is of a personal nature, it constitutes an attack. You're here for the facts. You want to hear them out, but we won't have those sort of attacks. So, yes.
And again, I will rely on the city manager to help to identify where that line is and give the city manager, of course, always the option to call on the chair to stop the discussion.
We'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
So this leaves us to, just a moment, just to citizens. Yes, Councilman Hobart.
I was going to suggest that you or the city manager, whoever's running the meeting or whoever's in charge of their portion, if they're the first line of sort of policing the behavior. Mr. Randall used a good word. I think if somebody's like Councilmember Huff said, they say, well, John came out and trimmed the tree or fixed the problem. I really appreciated that. That's great. But if they get into personal issues, or then of course obviously aggressive issues, then the chair would be responsible for using their discretion. If otherwise, I think the council members, if it makes sense, it's a little trial lawyer-ish, but maybe we should be able to object and just say objection, or interrupt and say Madam Mayor, or
Let's not get into objections, if I may ask. But as I said, I believe it's all of our responsibility to make sure that we have a well-run meeting, and if at any time a council member feels like the debate or the comments from a citizen or comments from a council member are going over the line, please do not hesitate to speak up, be asked to be recognized, and ask that the chair, whether it be me, Councilman Huff, or one of you, halt that line of comment. I will say, in reviewing this, it does say members, which I presume to mean council members, but I will not allow for citizens to be under any a form of attack that I would not tolerate if it were coming from them to us. So I will be mindful of that, and I hope some of these things we have very lively meetings, we get a lot accomplished, but we certainly need to be respectful, and I will extend this when I am chairing the meeting to include citizens. Unless there's any reason why a council member feels that is not permitted under the council rules of procedure, or that we need to specifically include that. Okay. Is that all, Becky?
I think I've said enough this evening, so
Okay.
yes, I'm finished.
Thank you very much. That was a very good discussion, and I'm happy that we've made some progress on making sure that we run our meetings effectively and smoothly. Mr. City Manager, is there anything else this evening?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned.